everybody, and welcome to our Women in Sports series live with Vitality. My name is Alex Danson-Bennett, former England and Great Britain hockey captain, and I am delighted to be hosting a conversation on Let's Talk Women's Health. I'm so excited to be joined by three fabulous guests with a wealth of knowledge, and I have to be honest, more qualifications and experiences than I've had hot dinners. So first up, please let me introduce you to Dr. Folusha Oluwajana.
Hi.
Hi, Folusha. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Folusha is a portfolio GP in North London with 9 years experience. She has a first-class BSc in sports and exercise medicine and is a qualified personal trainer. She has a passion for all things nutrition and fitness and providing high-quality, evidence-based advice onto her clients. Whilst performance and physical goals are important, she is a true believer that exercise is a form of medicine and is an advocate for improving general health and well-being. With 10 years of clinical NHS experience, allows Folusha to offer meaningful health and lifestyle advice and also cater to those with pre-existing health conditions. Her experience has also been acknowledged by national publications, and she has contributed to both The Stylist and my favourite, Women's Health magazine. Folusha, thank you so much for joining us. Really looking forward to having you in the conversation.
Definitely.
And next up, welcome, we have Dr. Anushka Pat Java.
Hi, Alex.
Hi.
Nice
Hi, Anushka. Thank you so much for joining us. Little introduction. Anushka is the Deputy Chief Medical Officer at Vitality and a qualified medical doctor who has studied at both Cambridge and Harvard universities. Anushka also has a breadth of professional qualifications in areas including digital strategy, leadership, and value-based healthcare and marketing and analytics. Outside of work, her interests are embedded in the 3 C's: CrossFit, charity, and creations. She has advised a variety of health-related startups on their journey to commercialization and is most invigorated by this sort of work. In 2003, age 18, she was the second youngest person to complete the London Marathon, making it around the course in under 5 hours, I wish, despite fracturing her knee at 8 miles. She continues to be an active all-rounder, summiting mountains, most recently Southeast Asia's tallest, and has competed at national powerlifting competitions, amongst other things. Welcome, Anushka. I feel exhausted just sharing your bio.
Thanks, Alex.
And last, but by no means least, we have Professor Gordon Wishart.
Hi, Alex.
Hi, Gordon. Gordon is the founder and chief medical officer and CEO of Check for Cancer, a leading early cancer detection and early cancer prevention company. In late 2017, Check for Cancer launched the first worldwide breast cancer risk test to combine genetic, family history, and lifestyle risk factors to underpin a risk-stratified breast screening program. As a former director of the Cambridge Breast Unit and current professor of cancer surgery at Anglia Ruskin School of Medicine, he has a strong track record in clinical research and modernisation of cancer diagnosis and treatment. In 2010, he had a team of clinicians and scientists that developed the PREDICT breast cancer treatment and survival model, now used worldwide. So, where do I begin? Where do we start? Women's health seems like such a broad topic, and we only have 30 minutes. So I've taken my lead today from all the fabulous questions we've had for our experts, from prevention to treatment, the place exercise has in our health, can diet really make a difference, to fertility and the shocking statistics of cancer. So if I may, I'm going to come to you, Folusha, first. You are passionate about empowering your clients to prioritise their health and take control of their bodies. What does that mean? And what does that look like? And how do you support your clients to take that on themselves?
I guess this goes back to one of the reasons why I got into this aspect of, I guess it's more of a lifestyle medicine picture than typical traditional medicine. At medical school, I was always quite into exercise, anyway. But the more medicine you learn, the more public health you encounter, I felt that exercise wasn't really being taught very well in medical school as a treatment or preventative measure for the majority of sort of chronic health conditions that the NHS has to manage, such as heart disease and diabetes, as well as mental health as well. So I ended up doing a BSc in sports exercise medicine, but I took a kind of public health educational aspect and looked at the lack of exercise medicine in medical schools at the time. And that just made me just more interested in trying to take this forward as something I'm personally interested in. The NHS is amazing, but is very overwhelmed with medical conditions and people, and resources are limited at times. So for my own personal satisfaction, I wanted to be able to offer people a balanced lifestyle view on their health. So I also started doing my personal training and sort of lifestyle medicine picture. So really about giving people the power and responsibility is kind of trying to find that motivation in people from earlier in their lives or earlier in their disease process to look at their lifestyle rather than wait until the very last minute and waiting to rely on medications or healthcare professionals to help them when they can start helping themselves.
That sounds so interesting. So it's so many times we hear about looking after our health and our well-being from a holistic point of view, and particularly from an exercise, nutrition, diet, and you've kind of almost combined all of those and use that really day to day in your practice. Gordon, thank you very much for joining us. First of all, can you please tell us a little bit about Check for Cancer and how and why you were so passionate about starting this up?
Yes, I mean, I think we're really interested in cancer prevention. We're interested in people like Folusha taking control of their own health. We know many of the risk factors for the common cancers now. Many of them are lifestyle related. You know, it may come as a surprise to some people that alcohol and obesity are risk factors for breast and bowel cancer, and that more than 50% of bowel cancers are preventable. So it's all really, I think, the way forward in terms of reorganizing cancer services is going to be much more focused on cancer prevention, assessing individual people's risk, and then screening them according to their risk. At the moment, we tend to just screen everybody above a certain age for a particular cancer. But we have good ways now of assessing individual and personal risk, either with lifestyle and family history questionnaires, or increasingly with quite simple genetic testing. So I think the way forward is really to focus on that much earlier part of the cancer diagnostic pathway through risk assessment and prevention, and trying to stop people presenting with later stage cancers, which unfortunately still happens and has been much more prevalent as a result of the disruption to services during the pandemic.
It's amazing to think that there are even small things I can consider at home that could help support preventing something as terrifying as cancer when you talk around nutrition, well-being and overall health. Anushka, staying on the kind of theme of prevention, you're obviously incredibly active yourself, as we heard from the bio. Is it something that within your workspace, would you ever tell someone or speak to somebody about perhaps prescribing exercise or nutrition in many of the conditions you see within your workspace?
Great question, Alex. And I echo very strongly what Folusha and Gordon have said so far around the holistic approach to healthcare and changing how we deliver healthcare and not making it a one size fit all. And that's what Gordon was alluding to, how we make healthcare more personalized to fit to a person's risk, but also to a person's lifestyle and what they can ably do and afford. Within Vitality, we have our Vitality program that is very focused on rewarding and incentivizing and empowering our members towards better health and better health outcomes. And within that, I'm a loyal advocate of the standing up 12 times a day. My Apple Watch reminds me to do that, and I do that 12 times a day. Keeping up with 30 minutes or more of exercise, and that could be light exercise if you're unwell or you're someone who's living with or beyond cancer, but also for those of us who are fit and well, that could be, you know, heavy or moderate exercise to enable us to pump blood around our body, for want of a better phrase, but also to get the benefits that exercise brings in terms of the hormones and the other factors, the psychological benefits that exercise brings. And then on top of that, Vitality and as a business, we work very closely with rewarding health behaviors, and that could be rewarding healthy nutrition. We have a great partnership with the likes of Waitrose in order to drive people towards those healthier choices. And I think all of that plays a massive part into keeping people healthy and preventing people from becoming unhealthy, but also those that unfortunately for reasons that they are out of their control have developed cancer. It's how do you rehabilitate or prehabilitate them so that they can take on board the treatments and the regime and come out of it stronger and better.
That's so interesting. Thank you, Anusha. Folusha, you're sat in your office currently after, I am sure, a very, very long day. Okay, let's get back down to the absolute raw bones. What, in your experience, when women come to see you in your practice, what are some of the most common health issues that we are facing?
Common health issues. I think I would actually put that into context of what I maybe am seeing more now in the past year as a result of the pandemic, which is still a good mixture of physical and mental health, but definitely more stress and anxiety and depression that's probably as a result of the pandemic, but also sort of the associated work stresses, family stresses, economic stresses that have come from this last 12 months of, you know, lockdown and uncertainty. So definitely seeing more of that, and women's often probably even more marginalized as a group because they're often the people that are looking after the families, and they're stuck at home with them, but then also trying to work at home with their young children perhaps, or more likely to sacrifice their jobs and stuff during the lockdown so that they can stay at home with the children because schools are at home. So there's quite a lot of nuances that actually have affected women perhaps more during the lockdown. In terms of physical health, definitely weight gain, unfortunately. I think everyone can admit that at some point during lockdown, your physical activity levels will have reduced, people are gaining weight. Also, eating habits have changed, maybe because people are at home more, maybe because of this stresses, emotional stress that people are under, that maybe not taking as good care of their diet. So definitely weight gain, and that probably we have definitely seen an increase or maybe deterioration in people who already have some health conditions like high blood pressure and diabetes, whose control has become not as good over the past year. So that's another common presentation. However, on the cancer presentations, actually, from our point of view, we're actually really encouraging people to don't shy away from coming to the doctors just because we're in the middle of the pandemic, because we probably are seeing less people present because they're concerned about the virus, they're concerned about coming to the practice and going back home. So we want people to come if they have any concerns about cancers, and we need to try and get people back to coming to general practice about that.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, that's a great, we've got no one better than you, Gordon. So what should I imagine? I'm one of those people, I've gone in to see Folusha. What should I be looking out for in terms of, particularly for women, I'm 35, the kind of cancer checks I should be doing really, I guess, rather regularly to make sure if there is something nasty, I'm able to catch it nice and early?
Yeah, I think there are probably two things that stand out. One is, I think it is really good that women are aware of what their breasts look like and what they feel like, because it can be very, very different between different people. And if you do, then you're in a much better position to tell if you find a lump or a change in the shape of your breast or a change in your nipple. So I think in terms of breast, I think that's what you ought to do. And then, of course, at age 35, you will already have started usually to do cervical cancer screening, which starts at age 25. And I think one of the key messages I want to get across is that we're now vaccinating young girls aged 12 to 13 against HPV. And that started in 2008. And we're now just seeing those first people that got vaccinated come through to screening age. And the point I want to make is that the vaccine doesn't actually reduce the risk to zero. it reduces the risk of getting HPV infection by about 70%. So screening is still really important, and it's the combination of HPV vaccination and screening that will eventually eradicate cervical cancer. So I think that's really important. And we know at the moment that 1 in 4 people doesn't accept their NHS screening appointment for cervical cancer. And it's 1 in 3 if you look at women aged 25 to 34. So my key message is to accept cervical screening and to make sure you do come and get checked.
I mean, I think if there's one thing we can take from this is 1 in 4 has to be better than that. It as you said, it's such an easy, free service for us to go along and do. So that would be definitely my takeaway, number 1 tick. Anushka, over to you. Let's talk something slightly different, but let's talk fertility, because, you know, I know as a woman, I very, very blessed. 2 months ago, I had my first baby. But I remember actually I was in my career, I was getting older. I did start to wonder, think, and hope that my fertility would be such that I was able to have children. Is this something that you often have people come through to speak to you? And can you talk to me about perhaps freezing eggs?
Sure, thank you, Alex. Congratulations on your newborn, and I suspect it's a very interesting journey when you're doing that in the pandemic and during lockdown. I think what Gordon was saying around cervical cancer and breast cancer and women's cancers ties very closely to fertility, because I know people tend to think about cancer and maybe push fertility sometimes to the background. And as you say, it then catches up with you because you've, you know, for want of a better word, you've been focusing on career or lifestyle, and then you realize, you know, you're mid-30s, and if we listen to the media, that's when we should start worrying about our fertility. I'm the same age as you, Alex, and I don't have any children yet, so I do know quite a lot around this space from my own research. And I think that there's 3 key points to make here. I think the first one being that fertility is a very individual journey. You'll hear the horror stories of people who are 21, 22, 23 that are unfortunately struggling with fertility because they have physiological or other conditions. And then you'll hear that, you know, you've got a 45 or 46 or 47-year-old who didn't have any problem and was able to have a child. So it's a very individual journey, and it's very hard to predict or be able to say what is normal and what normal looks like. I think for anyone who is contemplating and struggling with fertility, the first place to start is definitely by booking in to see your GP. Your GP can do a series of normal, or what we'd call routine blood tests, looking at your body function, so looking at your full blood count, looking at your thyroid function, looking at your hormone levels, and ensure that there aren't any deviations or aberrations which could affect your fertility. It's then worth also from that looking at more specific indicators around fertility. So as well as hormone levels, you can look at a specific one called AMH, which helps a woman understand where that she is in terms of her follicle producing capabilities and such likes. And then having a full gynecological assessment with an ultrasound scan to look for any anatomical abnormalities, and some swabs that can look for any infections or anything else that could give you an increased risk of infertility and or fertility issues. And then I think the third area, so once you've acknowledged that it's an individual journey and not to compare yourself to anything you've read about or seen in the media, you visit your GP to have your routine checks and make sure everything is functioning as you'd expect it to be. The third area is then delving into the minefield that is fertility services. So as most people know, a lot of this is not offered on the NHS, and if it is, it's by exception rather than by default. And a lot of people then have to explore the private clinics and such likes, and separating the signal from the noise in that space around what the offer is and what does the price which you pay for it can include is very challenging. And I'd say for women going through that and that journey, try to take someone with you to support you. That doesn't necessarily have to be a partner. That could be a friend, a colleague, a family member, to help you when you're dealing with the emotional conversations, but also to help you understand the information that's thrown at you. There's a lot of information out there, and it's very hard to separate the signal from the noise. A lot of people talk about egg freezing right now, and again, there is decisions to be made around whether you freeze just an embryo, so the sperm and the egg together, or whether you freeze just an egg. And neither treatment is easy. Both treatments involve you injecting yourself with hormones and a variety of scans. It's not a one in, one out treatment. It takes several months, and they're not always guaranteed to work first time. So how do you combat and deal with all of that? I think it's through open conversation with those around you. That's what you're considering. It's through raising your own awareness. There's lots of articles and sites online. There are fertility apps and websites that can help you demystify what's available to you. And then equally, there are lots of podcasts that I've been listening to one that Sophia Monning-Coutts has released, a friend I went to university with, around freezing eggs, that can help normalize the journey if you go down that route. But it's an interesting question, and it's one I think we shouldn't shy away from. And one of the kind of key points I would say is always let your employer know that that's something you're considering, because the journey is quite difficult and is more emotional than you'd expect.
I think that's so. Thank you so much, Anushka. I mean, that's the perfect almost. The emotions that are involved in something like that, from some personal experience as well, is so enormous. I think the advice that really sticks out for me is take somebody with you, speak to your employees. I know Folusha, who we've just lost. I'm sure we'll get her back in a moment. She spoke around, particularly at the moment with the pandemic, with some people's mental health really being affected. You throw another health issue or worry in there, and you're in a really difficult spot. Gordon, one question that I had sent in is, or something I read earlier, I read a terrifying stat that 1 in 2 women at some point in their lifestyle may experience cancer. I mean, first of all, is that correct? And secondly, what would be your, or are there any ways that we can really think about preventing that?
Yes, the 1 in 2 statistic is unfortunately true, that 1 in 2 men and women born after 1960 will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. So that is a worrying statistic. But as I said earlier, many cancers can actually be prevented, and a lot of the increase in, for instance, breast cancer in the last 2 or 3 decades has been largely lifestyle driven. And so there are a huge number of areas that we can tackle. And as I say, it's going to be all about education, making people aware that they may have risks that are reversible. Not all risks are reversible. You can't do anything about your family history, but you can do something about some of the lifestyle things that you have chosen to follow. And I think it's going to be education, education, education. But I keep coming back to, we can't expect the government to tell us to do everything. It's on, it's our own responsibility to listen to that information and to act on it.
And Alex, if I could jump in there, I think the other point to make with all cancers is, and when we're talking about women's health, is we naturally tend to focus on breast cancer, ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, but women are also at risk of getting lung cancer, bronchus cancer, colorectal cancer, and actually they are some of the ones that truly affect women quite significantly. And for one of, I guess, understanding why, I think that the reaction I would have there and the advice I would have there is know your bodies and know when your bodies aren't functioning as you would normally expect, whether that is with your periods or whether that is with, discharge or blood or in stools or vaginal blood or any sort of abnormality. Be alert to that and be aware of that and seek help early rather than waiting for it to settle down or resolve on its own. And that's how we will be able to pick up cancers earlier in their journey, as Gordon was referring to, but also be aware that women do suffer from colorectal and other cancers like lung and thyroid equally as much as the gynae cancers we've so far referred to.
Yes, please do, Gordon.
Come back now. I just want to say that because of the disruption to cancer screening during lockdown, and because we currently run NHS services for breast, bowel and cervical cancer, women have been disproportionately affected by the disruption to cancer screening. And so a key message is that when those invitations come through, albeit delayed, please go and get checked. I think that's a really important message.
I think that's probably the most important message. And also thank you, Anushka, in terms of sometimes it's the confidence to go when we recognize there is a change in our body. We're very resilient as humans, and we'll carry on, we'll crack on. And actually the right thing and the best thing to do is just go and get checked. Folusha, a question to you. Anushka was speaking around the mental health issues that can come with, for example, fertility. Now, you spoke before during the pandemic, that's something that has obviously affected a lot of people for a whole variety of reasons. But then you put on top potentially a medical issue. How have you got any practical tips that you give to your patients when they come to see you about how they can really support that and make that slightly better for them?
Yes, I mean, I guess I'll talk from a sort of average person that's not suffering with severe mental health, because it's probably quite different. But if you're not suffering from severe mental health symptoms or disorders, a lot of people have been experiencing more stress, anxiety, and low mood during the pandemic. And some of the advice I give and some of my other colleagues give is about, particularly for women, is often that they are not actually prioritizing their own health and well-being in the situation. And understandably, there's a lot of external stresses from family and work and other things that are going on, but you will not be able to take care of other people well if you're not taking care of yourself well. So it's to try and prioritize your own well-being, whether that is looking at your schedule and your diary and changing things around so you've got some time for yourself, doing something that you enjoy, whether it's exercise, reading, just making sure you've got some time to prioritize yourself, talking to other people as well. So lots of times you find women will come in with concerns about stress that they've carried themselves for the past sort of 6 to 12 months and not spoke to anyone about it. So no one actually knows how stressed they're feeling at work, and no one actually knows that they need that help, they need that time. So it's encouraging people to try and speak to someone who they trust or who will listen to them. And even sometimes just speaking to someone can make people feel like slightly lighter in the way that they've been carrying as well. Diet and exercise, I'll mention that they're all really important at making sure your mind is functioning well, supporting good concentration, good sleep. Physical and mental function are really important when dealing with stressful situations. But if things are getting too much, is to speak to healthcare professional. Although most areas will have direct access to psychology, that you don't even need to speak to your GP. You can self-refer. There are online resources as well that you can often access through the NHS for self-help.
That's fabulous. I think there won't be one person listening that over this pandemic, at some point, that advice will be incredibly valuable. Thank you. The time goes so quickly. I do have a whole host of questions from our listeners. So thank you, everybody, for sending those in. I'm going to read them out one by one, and I'll come to each of you. You are very, very welcome to say, I'm passing over too, if you think there's someone better placed to answer. So my first question is, are vitamins useful, or can they be more harmful than good? Now, I'm absolutely fascinated to hear the answer to this. Anushka, can we send that one to you?
Sounds good. So I think vitamins can be useful, and they can also be more harmful than good. That's not me sitting on the fence there. So I think there are specific vitamins that can help if you have a derivation away from normal. So if you had a full blood count that showed that you had low iron, for example, you might benefit from iron supplements. If you're someone like Folusha, myself, Alex, and no doubt Gordon as well, who are incredibly active, magnesium can help with muscle recovery. It can help with the aches and pains at the end of the day. It can help with sleep. Calcium is a good one if you don't drink exogenous calcium sources, so milk or eat cheese, or if you're dairy intolerant, calcium is a good vitamin to take to boost your levels back to what we call normal range. So I think vitamins are good if you know that you're not within normal range and can help substitute and help you get there. But equally, an important point to make is that a healthy diet, there's really no substitute for that. A healthy diet that is balanced and accounts for the right types of foods, be it fruit and vegetables, lentils if you're vegan, meat if you're not vegan or vegetarian, etc. There's no substitute for that. And then I also think that the point around vitamins being that everyone thinks supplements fixes everything. It doesn't. Supplements may help prevent injury or prevent you feeling unwell or prevent you from experiencing health issues, but it doesn't combat everything. And definitely, I don't think there's any direct correlation between vitamins preventing, diseases like cancer. They can help, you on your journey, but I don't think you can say that, I've taken my vitamins, I don't need to get any cervical screening, for example.
So it sounds like eat our greens, eat our vegetables, make sure we visit our doctor if we need to, and have a very balanced life, it sounds like. I think this one perhaps is a question for Gordon. I'm in my 40s, and I know you've probably answered this, but I don't see there's any harm in hammering this home. I'm in my 40s. What screening tests would you recommend as a normal well-being check from my GP?
Okay, well, we've already discussed cervical screening, which for someone in their 40s is important. If someone's got a strong family history of breast cancer, so maybe 2 or 3 first-degree relatives that have been diagnosed under the age of 60, they may fall into what we call the moderate risk group for breast cancer, and so they start screening at age 40. So most of the other screenings start from 50 upwards, but certainly cervical cancer and breast, if you're at increased risk, might start for someone in their 40s. And apart from that, it's just being generally aware. And if you get unusual symptoms or symptoms that go on for much longer than they should, then you need to come and see a healthcare professional.
Great, thank you, Gordon. And one for you, Folusha. How do I know when my menopause will start?
Oh, that's interesting, because I'm writing an article on menopause, right, and how it affects your ability to run right now. But anyway, menopause, how do we know? Well, we don't know. The average age is sort of about between 49 and 52 in the UK of having your last period. That's the menopause. Perimenopause probably starts earlier, it can be months to years earlier, and that's the period where things are changing, but you're probably still having periods. And at that point, usually the first sign is irregular periods, whether they're shorter, sometimes longer, more frequent, lighter or heavier, they just start changing. And the other hormonal symptoms and side effects secondary to reducing estrogen levels that are very common are things like hot flushes and night sweats, mood changes, irritability, anxiety, aches and pains, vaginal dryness. There's quite a whole host of them. So there isn't actually a way of knowing, you just have to wait for the symptoms. Before the age of 40 is considered very early, or before the age of 45 is considered quite premature as well. So if you notice symptoms around those ages that you think are suggestive of menopause, you should speak to someone. Otherwise, the menopause is completely natural, and above the age of 45, most women will have completed it by the time they get to 52. If you have symptoms that you are struggling with, though, there are things you can do to help, both lifestyle, but also there is a medication available as well.
Fabulous, thank you, Folusha. And one last one to you, Anushka. So much of what we've talked about this evening, which has been so insightful, has been around prevention and then when and why and how to get checked. Now, for anybody sat at home feeling nervous, thinking, should I, shouldn't I, what would you say directly to them?
So I'll take the menopause bit first. If anyone of our members are struggling with menopause symptoms or want some more information on menopause, Vitality have partnered with Peppy. It's available through the member zone, and you can access the app and get some information, understand a little bit more, attend webinars, etc. If you're sat on the sofa at home and you're thinking, I'm not feeling 100%, there's something wrong, but I don't know what it is, then there's 2 options. And I'd always advocate getting help and speaking to someone as the way forwards, rather than letting it fester and develop. As Gordon mentioned, catching cancers early or catching any sort of pathology early leaves you with the best outcomes overall. So I think if you're feeling unwell and it's been a long time since you've had a health check, then definitely book in for an annual health check. It's a great habit to get into, just the same way we get our eyes tested, the same way we see a dentist, the same way, we, I don't know, pay our road tax, our car insurance, etc. An annual health check is a one way to make sure that everything's functioning as it should be. It allows you to understand your body, understand your baseline, understanding your baseline blood results, and reassures you that things like cholesterol, which can creep up on you, are still within normal range and not rendering you at higher risk of developing diabetes or cardiovascular disease. So I think that's the first thing you could do. And you can book health checks. We can do health checks virtually now. We work with an organisation that does virtual health checks at Vitality. So it's not even about you having to leave the house and go to a clinic. And if that doesn't make you feel comfortable, you can get it all done at home. The second thing I say is particularly around people who may be feeling low mood or feeling anxious about a symptom or, you know, an abnormality that they're experiencing, is book in to see your GP. Because that will give you the opportunity to explain your symptoms, but also, again, the GP is able to run tests and clarify and help get to the bottom of that. And if it is a mood issue around, you know, lockdown or any other uncertainties and anxieties, then that gives you someone to talk to, and hopefully they will be able to connect you with other support networks, and or if it helps, medication to help relieve your symptoms during the current period we're all experiencing. So I would say action, action, action. Don't sit on anything waiting for it to get better. If you are experiencing symptoms over a short to medium period of time, then do seek help and put your mind at rest.
Fabulous. Thank you, Anusha. It has been absolutely incredible speaking to all three of you tonight. Thank you. But our time is up. 30 minutes go so quickly. So all I do have left to say is, Gordon, Folusha and Anushka, a ginormous thank you for all of your time, and quite frankly, for potentially giving us some really life-saving and life-changing advice. And to all of you at home, thank you so much for tuning in again today. I hope you've enjoyed our Women in Sports series and tonight's webinar. That's it from me, but keep your eyes out for more special guests and topical conversations to come in the future. Gordon, Anushka, Folusha, everybody that's tuned in at home, thank you and good night.